Hey everybody, Mr. Macintosh here, and in this video we're going to talk about a serious macOS Big Sur upgrade problem. If you upgrade your Mac to macOS Big Sur and you don't have enough free hard drive space available, you could have a very serious error. And this error says an error has occurred preparing the software update. The update will kick off anyway, even though you don't have enough free space. It will run out of space. You won't be able to get out of it because the hard drive is 100% full from the upgrader trying to finish the update. If you have FileVault enabled, it makes it even worse because you're now locked out of your data and there's nothing you can do. It won't even accept your password when you try to unlock the drive in recovery. So I'm going to go over all the details about this problem. Then I'm going to run over a live installation of macOS Big Sur Upgrade, exactly in real time what happens. After that, I'm going to go over some of the fixes and what we're going to need to do to rescue your Mac if you're in that situation, because it gets very complicated. Do you have FileVault enabled? Do you have external boot enabled so you could boot to a USB installer on a T2 device? If not, then you're even more trouble. There's a lot of details and a lot of different situations that we're going to have to go over, and I'm going to show you everything you need to know in every situation. How to rescue your data, we'll clear up some space, and then that will let the Big Sur upgrader install and finish, and your Mac will be back in A-OK shape, and you'll be running macOS Big Sur in no time. We've got a lot of things to cover, so let's jump in and get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is go over how you would be in this situation. You could be running High Sierra, Mojave, or Catalina, and you wanted to upgrade to Big Sur. So you started software update in here, and it said you could update to Big Sur, and you're saying, all right, I'm ready to go here. Let's click install. I think I'm ready to take the step to jump to Big Sur. Here you click upgrade now. It downloads the update, and it says install now. This opens up behind, and you click continue, and you're saying, I'm ready to update. The problem is the 11.2 installer does not check to make sure you have enough free space. So you can check for free space multiple ways. You can go up to Apple and About This Mac and click on storage. You can click on the hard drive and you can click right here, do a Command I, and then we can zoom in here and you can actually see the free space available. And on this device, I set it up to be in the perfect situation. Under the 15 gigabytes that I confirmed will always create the issue. I was able to confirm that if I'm under 13 gigs, the installer will attempt to copy the files to a hidden partition to prepare the device for the install. It runs those files from that partition or that volume while the main Macintosh hard drive is unmounted so it can update. If it can't copy the entire 13 gigabyte installer to that temporary location, then it will give you an error and it will stop. So if you have 13 or under, you're okay because you're going to get the error. But if you're anywhere between 13 and maybe 20 gigabytes, you're going to be in that situation. Apple says, and I've got that article right here on the technical specifications and the requirements for macOS Big Sur, you need at least 35 gigabytes. So my recommendation is that you need to see at least 35 gigabytes available in your free space before you kick off this up. Again, I've got Big Sur set up here and ready to install. So we click continue, agree again, and wait a minute, we're not getting the error. I can just click continue here and it's going to reboot to the installer and we're going to be in that situation and we're going to do that. But before we do that, I'm going to show you what an older installer that doesn't have the problem. So we're going to fire up 11.01 installer and I'm going to show you what it should do. This doesn't have the problem. We'll click agree again, and look at that. Not enough space on the selected volume to upgrade to macOS. An additional 21.5 gigabytes is required. Now think about this for a second here. That puts us right at our 35 gigabytes that we talked about in the technical requirements for macOS Big Sur. So that's exactly what should happen on the 11.2 upgrade, and it does not. And look, we can't continue until we free up that space. So we'll go back to the 11.2 upgrade, we'll fire that up again, and we're going to kick this thing off and cause some problems. But before we do that, I'm going to make this even more difficult to recover. We're going to go in here, we're going to enable FileVault encryption, and we're encrypted. So now this is going to be even more difficult. Now that FileVault is enabled, I wanted to make sure you see the password that we're using to do that. I've got my keyboard down here, but in the camera, I enable the keyboard and accessibility settings so you could use the mouse to be able to type in the password so you can see live here. So we'll unlock this. There's only one user on the system. The name is test. So we're going to click unlock. We're going to go here. We're going to type in the password 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see that that unlocks and that's the password. Very simple, because I want to show you when we're typing in the password to unlock the drive, it's not going to work. And then this is critical to be able to see what the password is before we begin here. Now we'll close this window here, and we're going to get this upgrade started, and then we're going to jump into some of the details about this. So we're going to click on continue here, agree again, and again, before we begin, we've got 14.75 gigabytes, not enough space to finish this update, but enough to surpass the 13 gigabyte error that we would get if we wanted to start the update, because it doesn't run enough space to copy the temporary files. Click agree here, and here we go. We'll type in the password again, 1 2 3 4, and okay. And off that it goes. The 15 minutes remaining is copying those files to the temporary location for the installation. And you're going to see the available space, and we're going to zoom in on that, and you'll see that go down while we're talking here. Let's go back to the article and start talking about some of the things here. So this is the article that I put together, talking about all of the information that we're going to need to know about this entire thing from beginning to the end. It took, and look at this, we're already down to 11.9 gigs, 5 gigs. So we're going all the way down. We're only going to probably have maybe 1 gigabyte available. There's 3, so we're almost there. Copying all those files, then it prepares the files, and then it restarts to the installer. And we'll see what we end up here. We're getting really close. Back to the article. I put together this entire article, and it's been picked up by everybody because it's a very serious problem, and people are losing their data. And I feel for these people, and this is one of the reasons why I do this. There's nothing more than I hate to see people having serious problems with their Mac where they lose their data. That's one of the worst things that could possibly happen to you when you're using a computer. Yes, you need to back up, and I say that all day too, but let's be honest, sometimes with all of the busy things that are going on in our life, that doesn't happen. So sometimes we forget about a backup, and we don't expect maybe just doing an update to have a catastrophic problem like this happen. And this has been happening for the last couple of weeks and a month, and people have been losing their data because they would bring it into the Apple Store, and the only thing they've been able to tell them is that we have to erase your drive and reinstall macOS. Hopefully you got a backup. And for some people they do. They've got a time machine. You're ready to go. You're awesome. But other people, they don't, and all of their data is gone. So hopefully I can catch some people with this article and this video and save your data before you erase your drive. So now let's jump in to talk about some of those things here and what we're going to need to rescue a machine. I've got a whole table of contents that goes over all these issues. I've also got an update section, so even in the future, if I have other things that I want to be able to show you that I've found out new, I put them in the update section. And again, I'll put a link to this article in the description below. First of all, the affected macOS Big Sur installers. I've confirmed this today. 11.01, not affected. It works fine. The space check. 11.1, not affected. The space check works. It was introduced in 11.2. I can reproduce that every time. And the bug went into the 11.3 beta installer. That is also confirmed. Now, one of the big questions is, does this affect updates? Because I saw a lot of people saying, hey, I just updated to Big Sur. But remember, there's a difference between those terms. Upgrade is from a previous operating system to Big Sur. Update would be like installing the 11.2 update from macOS Big Sur 11.1. I tested that, and you can see here, your disk does not have enough space to install the update. So that is working fine. It's only the upgrade that's having the issue. So affected Mac hardware. And this is an interesting thing because normally some of the issues that happen only happen maybe certain models, like maybe T2s or non-T2s are having the issue. In this situation, it's only Intel devices that are having this issue. This issue should not affect M1 Apple Silicon devices because the minimum operating system that you can put on an M1 Mac is Big Sur. So you can't install Catalina and then upgrade and have the problem on an M1 Mac. You can only install Big Sur. Now, back to the Intel Macs, there's differences in the Intel Macs too, whether you have a T2 chip or a previous Mac from 2013 all the way up to 2017. And we'll get into some of those details too. How can I tell if my Mac is affected by this issue? This error right here. I've got this machine set up here to show you exactly in this situation. I've got a picture of that here. And if you get this error after you've updated a Big Sur, you are definitely in this problem. And if you click OK, and we're going to go through that. And here we go. Let's go back to this real quick. We are getting ready to reboot the system. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And this is going to reboot to the installer in 21 seconds. And we've only got 2.38 gigabytes available to finish the update. And that's nowhere near enough space to be able to install those files and get the Big Sur upgrade finished. It's going to close all the applications and restart automatically. So by the time you come back, you see it's going to be updating. You're like, hey, this is working fine, until it comes up with this error. The next thing is, before we get, again, we're going to get to the how to fix and all these different situations, but I wanted to keep going over some of the details while we're waiting for this to go. How can I prevent this from happening to me? It's very cut and dry. Make sure you have at least 35.5 gigabytes of free space. Make it 36 to be super safe before you upgrade to macOS Big Sur. As of this taping, on February 13th of 2021, it is not fixed in 11.3 beta. I'm hoping that Apple will actually release a 11.2.2 upgrade. Currently we're on 11.2.1, and maybe they'll release a minor update with the full installer so this issue doesn't keep going for the next month and a half until Apple updates 11.3. But I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. Hopefully we don't have to wait for 11.3, but maybe they'll do 11.2.2 and we're all fixed with this. Won't happen to any more people. As long as you have 35.5 gigabytes of free space, this updater is going to install. And that's why this is not a huge widespread issue, because a lot of people have larger hard drives, for example, a 512 or a 1 terabyte, and you're not going to have the problem because you got enough free space. But the problem is that some of the MacBook Airs, for example, that only have 128 gigs, you're really pushing it, trying to have some data on your drive and also having 35 gigs free space, not including the 13 gigabyte full installer that's already all in your system. So if you think about it, you actually almost need 45 gigabytes of free space just to upgrade to macOS Big Sur. So that's that. User reports, I go over multiple user reports of people having this same issue. Reproducing this issue, it took some time to figure out what the heck was going on here. When I first started to investigate this issue, I could see that it was starting to be a widespread issue. When I saw this error though, I thought, well, what the heck could this possibly be? What are we even, what kind of a situation are we even in here? Is this recovery? What this actually is the macOS Update Assistant. So it fails out and it boots up this environment that it can give you an additional error and the ability to reboot to a different startup disk when the upgrade fails. And this is where we are now. And when I first saw that, I'm thinking to myself, how in the heck would a user even get into this? Did the upgrade fail monumentally somewhere? Was it someone's incompatible software? There were so many things at work here. Once I started to dive into the forums, what I did see some users report that they said that, hey, the only other thing I noticed is I didn't have very much free space available. And that was like a little tipping clue to say, maybe there's something to that. And a Mac admin named Steve on the Mac Admins Slack channel that we have for Macintosh administrators who take care of the Mac in enterprise and schools and different things, mentioned that he was testing out the installer. He wasn't getting the warning that there wasn't enough free space available. I started to put two and two together and said that maybe they're intertwined somewhere. The key, though, was to find out exactly where that was. What amount of free space could we do this at to trigger the issue? And then first I said, well, I'll fill up the hard drive all the way to 1 gigabyte. That didn't work. I got that error. And that's how I found out it had to be from 1 to 13. The installer will stop you because it runs out of free space to even copy the installation files. Then I said, okay, well, great. It's got to be over 13, but it's got to be under 35. So somewhere in that middle part, that's exactly how to reproduce the error. And I fired it off, and this is exactly what happened. I was able to reproduce the error. And when we're dealing with these things, being able to reproduce the error and come up with the exact scenario where this could happen is critical. But that was only step one. Step two is figuring out, okay, well, wait a minute. How do I fix this? Right now, the data on this drive is inaccessible if you're FileVault encrypted, and we'll go over that. We're going to get to that. If you are not FileVault encrypted, you are definitely in a better scenario, because you can boot to recovery and you can erase some files in recovery from your hard drive, and you clear up enough space for the installer to finish, and you're good to go. So then you clear the space, reboot from recovery, it goes back to the installer and then finishes because it has enough free space to finish the update. We were able to reproduce that. Now, then I talk about, well, what happens? And here we are at this step. Now the installer is updating all of the files on the Mojave hard drive to bring them up to macOS Big Sur. And that's what's happening right now, as you can see on this screen. And then, of course, obviously we get to this point where it runs out of space, restarts to the macOS Update Assistant. Then the next step is that when you click OK, it brings you to this thing. And we're going to do that here so we can walk along here. So when you get this, you're thinking, okay, well, now what do? I'll just click OK. And then it sits there. And then behind here, I'm going to move this out of the way, it's still sitting here with this update with a progress bar that's only about maybe 5%. And then it says, well, choose your startup disk. And you're thinking, well, where's my startup disk? And it can't even mount the disk because the drive is 100% full. Can't even do that. So you don't even have anything to do. And the user's probably thinking, well, wait a minute. Target disk mode, what the heck is this? And you click this and it says, well, you can restart your computer to target disk mode. At least that's a clue for you, because that's what we're going to need to do for certain situations. So what does that mean? Target disk mode is an Intel-based feature that allows your Mac to turn into an external hard drive. So what you can do, let me get the cable over here, is you can grab a USB-C cable or a Thunderbolt cable, and you can connect it to a second Mac, and it'll load it on your desktop. And I'll show you what that looks like right here. You can access it just like an external hard drive. So that's kind of giving you a little tip to say, hey, do this. But then again, you still don't know what you're supposed to do. What do you mean put it in a target disk mode? What is that going to do for me? So most people are hitting cancel, and they're going up here to startup disk, and they're hitting quit startup disk, and there's nothing else you can do in here. You go through the menu system, and it just basically says quit the setup the macOS Update Assistant here, and that just tells you to go to a startup disk or restart. If you hit restart, it's going to go right back to here and attempt to install the macOS Big Sur Upgrade all over again, and you'll return right back to this screen. So that's what we're going to do now. While we're waiting for this to get there, this machine is not encrypted. So I'm going to show you a couple different things that you can do to free up free space to rescue a Mac that's not encrypted. Now, this is very important. I have to go over multiple different scenarios here because this is where it gets confusing. Protection on recovery, and I'll show you what that looks like, where you can't even get into recovery if you're file vaulted and it won't accept your password. So that's why I wanted to show you a different scenario. If you're not encrypted, it's easier because it boots right into recovery, and then we can remove some files, or we can put it into the target disk mode to be able to access those files. So let's do that now. Let's put this into, I'm going to restart, and I'm going to hold down T on the external keyboard in here and put it into target disk mode so I can show you what the hard drive looks like and show you how to remove those files. So I'm going to hit restart now, and I'm going to hold down T or plug this machine into this macOS Big Sur device and be able to look at those files. So let's do that now. Notice how on the screen we've got a Thunderbolt icon and a USB icon, and it's going to switch to the whatever interface we're using. So we're going to use USB-C here, and we're going to plug it into the USB-C, and we're going to plug it into the MacBook Pro here. Okay, and as you can hear, I've got the fan going on this machine on the side. It's really working hard to install this Big Sur update here. So if you hear that fan noise, sorry about that. Okay, so now we've got it in a target disk mode. We're going to plug in the USB-C to the MacBook Pro, and we'll give it a second. It should change the logo here, and it did. And it should load on the desktop here in a second. We'll give it a second, and here it is. Enter your password to unlock the disk. Now, keep in mind, this is going to happen for a T2 Mac or an encrypted Mac. And notice we've got the caps lock on. We'll turn that off. And this is the hard drive that you have your data on, the Macintosh HD Data. That's where your data is stored when a split Macintosh hard drive has your operating system on it, and the Macintosh hard drive data partition has your information or your user folder, and that's on Catalina to Big Sur. Mojave did not. It had one partition called Macintosh hard drive. Now here we are. We're at an error occurred preparing the update. We're having the issue right now live so you can see what happened here. So let's go back to this. Now you're thinking, okay, no big deal. Let's type in my password. Remember what it was, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll hit return. We'll give it a second here. Nope. Sorry, we're not getting in. And you're thinking, well, wait a minute, I just typed in my password. What the heck is going on here? Why isn't this working? And the bottom line is that for some reason, it has problems loading the partition on macOS Catalina and macOS Big Sur. Now notice how it accepted the password, but it's not mounting the drive that we need. Macintosh hard drive isn't what we need. We need the Macintosh hard drive data because this holds the system, the operating system. We need the macOS hard drive data. So let's open up Disk Utility here and take a closer look at that. Now look at this. Here is our internal hard drive, but here's our external target disk mode disk. We've got to click this and we've got to see if we can, it says it's mounted, so let's unmount and try to mount it again here. Because that's the problem. We got to get that data. We're going to go here and we're going to click mount again, see if we can get a password here to try to get us connected. So we've got the hard drive. Let's see if we can right click on it and show in Finder. And there we are. Now keep in mind, that's going to be confusing to most people, right? Because you're going to try to mount it on the desktop and all it shows is Macintosh hard drive. And you're wondering, why wouldn't it show there? Why doesn't it show on the desktop? I don't know. The good news is that if we try this on a Mojave and below system, it loads just fine. So let's do that now. I want to just show you how simple that is. So if you're having problems getting the Macintosh HD Data drive to mount, let's go over that real quick on a Mojave system and below. Okay, let's plug in our target disk mode USB cable to our MacBook here, and we'll see the prompt come up here to be able to unlock the drive. Give it a second. And there's our prompt. Enter a password to unlock the disk. Notice how it doesn't say enter a password to unlock Macintosh hard drive data. So I think that's there's I can't explain it, but there's some kind of a difference here on why Mojave and High Sierra can unlock and display the disks properly, but Big Sur and Catalina has additional problems. So we'll type in the password here, 1234, and hit enter. We'll give it a second, and it's going to mount all three drives. The update drive that we talked about that has the installer information, the 13 gigabytes of installer, the macOS HD that has the operating system that's being upgraded now, and the macOS hard drive data. Let's open up the disk utility so we can see what's going on these drives, and that's part of the investigation that I was doing. We can go up here and click view and show all devices. We can click on the container and look at that. We are 100% full with only 57 megabytes available. That's our problem here. Now we can look at that update folder here and see all those temporary files that we were talking about that were copied over before the upgrade started. We'll close that though, and we can also see the Macintosh hard drive with the system on it. And let's go to the meat and potatoes of the whole thing, and that's the Macintosh HD Data, which is all your user folders. So let's open this up. We'll go into the user folder, and there's our test. We'll click on test, and here's all our files. Now, you might have this, and I'll explain this. And there's multiple people that have reached out and says, well, wait a minute, I can't access my files. What's the problem? It's because you don't have the permissions to be able to do that. And for some reason, Mojave doesn't understand that, hey, I'm loading this drive. For example, if I load this on Big Sur, I won't have those. So let's look at that. If I go Command I to get information about that drive, I don't have the permission to be able to do that. So I've got a really easy way for you to manage this. Instead of screwing around with the permissions of your folders, an easy way to do that is just to create a user on this system with the same name of your folder. And I'll show you what that looks like. So let's log out and we'll log in as test. That's the same name as I used on the other device. We'll put in the same password. The password doesn't matter. It's about the username that has the same permissions of your folders. And we'll show you what that looks like here. And there it is. Let's go back in there and we should have full read-write access to these folders. So let's go back into our user folder and go into our test, and look at that. Now we have full access to all of our folders. Let's clear up some space. We'll open up that disk utility, or we can go at the back, or you could just click on the Macintosh hard drive data. And if you don't see these drives, another thing, go up to Finder, go to Preferences, and make sure hard disks and external drives are, disks and CDs are always checkmarked. Hard disks and connected servers are not. So you should always see these, but you might not see your main boot drive. So we'll go into the desktop because that's where I put all those big files. So let's click on one of these to see the space. And we've got this one is 75 gigabytes. So this will be an easy one. We'll just delete this one and we'll move it to the trash. Now here's another thing that you got to keep an eye on. I wish this was simple. If you restarted the system right now, it is not going to clear it up until you empty the trash. Because if we look at that space here, we'll click on that and go Command I and look at the space. It's still full. It's still in the trash. And it does that because if you wanted to put it back, I could just drag this back. Until you click on this empty, it's not going to clear that space. So remember to empty that trash. We'll do that now. Empty the trash and watch this. It's going to go from 9 and it's going to shoot up. 75 gigabytes of free space. We're done. For a non-encrypted Mac, we've got it fixed. So now watch this. We will basically shut this down and we will right click on these guys and we will eject safely. And once we're ejected, we can disconnect here and we can reboot the Mac. Now give me a second and we'll be right back. Before I show you that this machine is fixed, I wanted to boot it back into recovery so I could show you how to rescue this Mac if you didn't have a second Mac. Let's say you don't have access to a Mojave system. Let's say you don't have another second Mac, or you don't even have the right cables to be able to do this. The good news is that we can still rescue a not encrypted Mac from being able to have a target disk mode or a second device. So now all you need to do is hold down Command R and you can get into recovery here. We can go into disk utility and we can take a look at that drive here and we can click on Macintosh hard drive data and you can see now, hey, we are freed up. But guess what? Let's pretend that we are 100% full and we still need to clear out some files. Well, I'm going to show you how to do that. We've got two ways we can do this. Way number one is probably the simplest way for you to be able to do this if you have some extra time. And then way number two is a little bit more complicated because we're going to use the terminal to run certain commands to be able to remove files. So the easy way to do it is if you have a little bit of time to just wait for the installation. And again, the problem with this one is that you need to have a 2017 and below Mac to be able to do this, because let's take a look at that and let's understand why you need that. If we go into the startup security utility, you need to be able to, and this is your problem. You don't have a user available while the update is happening, and that's why you're locked out of the system. So you can't even go in here and change the boot security to allow you to boot to another version of macOS, because that was going to be the fix, is just use your external hard drive here or your USB. So for example, just install macOS on here and then boot to it, macOS Mojave, and then boot to this from your Mac and then unlock the drive just like we did here. It'll mount the drive on your desktop, you clear the space, and then you reboot and the installer will finish. That's one way to do it. If I've got a T2 Mac with 2018 and 2020 and you didn't go in here and enable external boot media, it's gonna tell you can't do this. So you can install all day on here, but the minute you go in there to boot to it, it's gonna say, well, I can't boot to external, I can't select this hard drive to be able to boot to it. So that's gonna be a problem. And that's the protection of the T2 security chip. So that's why we would have to fall back to number two. But let's say you did this and you had boot media selected so you can boot to a USB hard drive or a USB flash stick or whatever you have, you're okay. So let's exit out here. And then all you need to do is go into disk utility, erase this drive, and then click reinstall macOS on this drive, restart, hold down option, select this drive here, and then boot to it. And then once you get in the operating system, it's going to look exactly like this. You'll see the hard drive in there, go in there, you erase the data, empty the trash, reboot the system, disconnect this drive, and it's going to boot directly to the installer. That's like one of the easy ways to be able to do that if you don't want to get into the terminal and run these commands. Because if you don't have these big files like I do, these simple, huge files, it's going to be a little bit more harder to do if you don't have the GUI to kind of help you out. So let's go into the terminal. Let's go to that harder mode here to try to figure that out. Again, the easiest way, have a second, like a family member or a friend, target disk mode. Simple as pie. We just went over that. Way number 2, install macOS on an external hard drive or USB flash stick. Way number 3, we got to go into terminal and we got to do it the hard way. But again, this is nice because we're going to learn a little bit here about how, and think about this, if you come from Windows, this is kind of like the DOS prompt and accessing the files from a terminal prompt, and you can manipulate the operating system with commands. So let's zoom in here so we can see what's happening here. This is our prompt. We need to take a look at what's on the drive here. So let's go and let's do an ls to see what directory you're in. Ls for list. And as you can see, all that is a library. We need to navigate to the Macintosh hard drive data. So we're going to do an ls on volumes / volumes. And then you can use the tab key to autocomplete if you want to be able to type in the command faster and you know where you're going. So I'm going to hit tab and it autocompletes the volumes. So let's just see what's in volumes. Hey, there's our Macintosh hard drive data. So let's navigate to that. So we'll do the LSN. We'll hit the up key to do the previous command. We'll do capital M for Macintosh. And then space, hard drive. And then dash data. That should autocomplete here. And then for a terminal command, whenever you do a space, you got to do a backslash. And then what we can do is hit tab again after we do a backslash on this here. Oops, we'll do this, and there we go. So now that's that, and then let's do a directory listing on our, there we go, we've got all the files, and then what we need to do is get to our user folder here. So there's our users, and then we want to do capital U for users, and then there's our test. That's our home folder. We'll do T for test and autocomplete. There's all of our folders, just like we saw over here. So now you have to remove something in here to get enough free space available. Let's navigate to the desktop folder. Let's click up again and type in D for desktop, autocomplete, and there's all those DMGs that we created. So let's delete one. How do we delete a file in terminal? We're going to use the RM, the remove binary command. So we'll tab up again. We'll go to the beginning of the command line and we'll do RM. Now, if we're going to delete a directory, we have to do remove force. So we would do -RF remove force, and then we can go all the way to the end, and we can type in the DMG. If you're just doing one file, you can just do the remove. But we're going to remove, let's do untitled 2. So we'll type in untitled, and we'll do the 2 and DMG. And that's it. And that's why you got to be careful when we're using the remove command. What it's basically doing is if you're in here, you know what you're doing. So that you got to be careful when you're removing the files. If you're removing a directory, you would have to go up here. And if you leave it at desktop, this would remove the entire desktop folder at this mark. I would recommend just deleting files first, not the entire folder, because that's where we can get into trouble if we don't know this command very well. So I'd recommend doing like we just did here and removing just individual files. Okay, so let's show you the deletion of a folder, because we talked about how to delete the individual files. Now let's talk about how to delete a folder. As you can see here, I ran mkdir to create a folder called test in your desktop. So we did an ls and we can see test is in there. So let's say you have a folder with a bunch of junk in it and you want to delete that folder. So let's just click up and we've got our ls, but we want to go to remove force. And that, again, that's without any warning. We've got all of our line here to the desktop, and then we'll go /T for test. And that's going to remove that folder and everything inside. So we'll hit return. And that's done. That's as quick as it goes. We'll tab up, we'll do an ls on it again, and the test folder is gone. Again, be very careful with the removing full folders, it's better to just remove individual files. Now let's look at another quick command here that I was talking about that would show you the space. I was off by a letter. It was DF, not DU. And look at that. We've got an entire list out of our entire drive. And look at this. Macintosh hard drive data, capacity 54%. So that'll show you a quick look over on how much you have available. 115 gigabytes available. So that's a real easy way to know what you're deleting to make sure you've got enough space to finish the update. So that's removing files in terminal to clear up. So you go, and then if that's a little bit difficult, quit out of terminal, go back into disk utility, and you can see that nice overview of the files in there. We'll click on show all devices, so we can click on the container and look at that. Remember when it was up here? Now we cleared out an additional space here, and now we've got plenty of space for this update to finish. So we're going to reboot this system now, and we're going to see how this finishes. It's going to go finish Big Sur, and we'll be at the login window. And now we're going to talk about if you're in an encrypted state and what you can do. So let's reboot, and we'll watch this go while we're continuing to talk about an encrypted device. And that's this guy. Remember, we encrypted this guy. So let's reboot this guy while we're waiting here. We'll click on this 10. And again, we don't have anything to reboot to. So all we can do is quick startup disk, and we're going to quit the update assistant, and we're going to restart, and we'll see what's interesting about this is it's going to reboot to the FileVault prompt before it tries to go back to the installer again. And the interesting part is it will accept our password. Once it comes up here, we'll move the keyboard up here so you can see. Okay, so here is our prompt. We're going to enter in our password 1234 and hit enter. And look at that. He accepts the password and it goes. It's not until once the drive is starting to install that we're going to have a problem here, and it's going to go right back to installing and upgrading, and we know it's going to error out again. What we're going to do is shut this machine down. And then we'll show you what happens in terminal, because this is one of the other things I did. I actually stopped it mid-install right here thinking, well, maybe I can free up enough space to be able to have the drive unlock. Nope. While it's in this upgrading mode, the user seems to be unavailable in an encrypted device. So for example, if I boot this back to recovery, I won't be able to get into the recovery device because I'll be prompted for a username and password. So let's shut this device down and we'll take a look at that. Okay, we're in recovery on this device that's encrypted, and it failed the upgrade, and this is why we get this. Notice how we went right into recovery over here because we weren't encrypted. When you encrypt your device, you can't get into recovery unless you know the password of the user or you have the personal recovery key. Remember when we encrypted, we clicked remember the recovery key, and I've got that down here, and we can show you that. I've got that recovery key saved over here. Or you know the password. So you say, okay, I know the password, no big deal. Let's click on this. We'll click next. We'll enter in the password. Remember, it's 1234, and we'll hit return. Nope. 1234. What the heck's going on? I can't get into recovery. At this point, you're thinking we are in some serious problems, right? It is not accepting the password. So then you think, okay, no big deal. We'll click cancel. I forgot my password. We'll reset the password. Let's click on that, and I'll show you what happens. We need to unlock the volume with the recovery key. Now, if you encrypted with your Apple ID, it'll just give you a message to sign in with your Apple ID, and you'll type that in, and it'll click recover and reset the password. It'll shake you off, and it says it would unable to reset the password with the recovery key. Let's type in this recovery key so you can see what happens though. 4ARDOBHVZ924 5YMUKRGLZ498, and we'll click next, and the supplied password failed to unlock the disk, and that's the error that we're going to get. And the same thing happens if you are an Apple ID encrypted and you try to unlock or reset the password. It will not work. So you're in a real pickle here, and this is what I was talking about in the article where it says you are locked out of your data and there's no way to access it. There's no way to do it. We're screwed. We can't get to recover. There's no options to be able to do anything. You go to startup disk, click unlock. You can't unlock it. The password doesn't work to even reboot and unlock the disk to be able to reboot it to. You're stuck. You're absolutely stuck. There's nothing you can do. Well, there's target disk mode. And that's your only chance. So again, we can reboot this device by holding down T, or we can just click on target disk mode right now and restart. That's their only way to get this data back on a T2 device that is encrypted. And the same thing with a 2013 to 2016 device that is encrypted. You're not going to be able to get to that data. And the reason why we can't do the external boot like we talked about is we can't even get to recovery to reinstall macOS like we could on this device. So that number 1 and number 2 are out of here. We can't do it. And since the T2 has got the security boot, even if you had Big Sur on here, you wouldn't be able to boot to it anyway. Now, if you had disabled that before, the USB external boot, and you enabled that, you could boot to this then, to your external hard drive if you had macOS installed. But you would need another Mac to be able to do that in the first place. Why even do that when you can just use target disk mode if you have a second Mac? So that's why having a T2 device is the worst situation you can be in if it's encrypted. It's not as bad as if you have a non-T2, because at least you can boot to another drive or another installation disk. But that's what we were talking about. So now we've got the T2 encrypted Mac in target disk mode. Let's connect it to a macOS Big Sur so I can show you what happens. So let me get that cable. We'll put it in here. Plug it into USB, and we'll plug it into the port over here, and I'll show you what that looks like. It is going to attempt to mount the drive. The password is not going to work. And this is what was even more confusing to technicians that are trying to fix this error or this problem for users. They're like, no big deal. We'll clear up the free space. Just plug it into my device. Okay, remember? Here we go. Unlock the password for Macintosh hard drive data, 1234, and enter. Nope, no password. 1234. Let's try it again. Come on, it's got to work. 1234. No deal. It's not going to work. And that's when I was trying to figure out what the heck could we do here. And that's when I remember there is a change in APFS between macOS Mojave and macOS Catalina. And if I connect this to a Catalina device, the same thing's going to happen. I can't unlock the macOS hard drive encrypted data. Trying to get access to a Mojave device might be difficult. Your friends might have a new device. If you, for example, if they have a 2020 MacBook Pro, you can't even install Mojave on it. And if you look here, I've got this website here that shows all of the devices. So here's your MacBook Pro. So your friend's got a 2020 MacBook Pro, but the earliest operating system he can even install on there is Catalina anyway. And that goes all the way back to the 2019 16-inch. If you got a 2019, you can do that. But that goes into the more difficulties here. So now we know that we can't mount an encrypted device with Big Sur or Catalina. Let's get our little MacBook out and connect it to that. And we'll disconnect here and we'll plug it into our little MacBook here. We've got our prompt, we've got our target disk mode plugged into our Mojave system here, and we're going to enter the same password, 1234, and enter. Give it a second to mount the drives and read the password. And look at it, we got our system coming back up here, and hopefully we'll have Big Sur in no time. We'll give that a little bit of time here, and look at that. Hopefully we'll get our drive mounted here. Give it a second here. And there it is. Awesome. We've got our Macintosh hard drive data. We can double click on this, and there's all of our folders. Users, test, desktop. All right, and there's all those DMGs that we talked about. So then all we need to do is delete that, empty the trash, and our T2 encrypted Mac is going to reboot and it's finish the installation like this one's going to do, and you're all fixed. Now, let's talk about that fix that I talked about, where if you don't have access to a Mojave or a High Sierra device, right? And you need to be able to copy your data off somehow, because I'm hoping that you can get access to a Mojave system, but if you don't, and you don't have anybody, that's where you're going to be in another additional pinch. So what we're going to do on this one is delete that Macintosh hard drive, and then we're going to boot back to macOS recovery. It will be able to then unlock the disk. So let's do that. So all we need to do is go over here to disk utility, click on Macintosh hard, not the data, remember, just the Macintosh hard drive. We'll click erase, and APFS is fine. We'll click erase, give it a second, and it should be clean, and we should reboot back to recovery and access and unlock that drive. Give it a second here. We're coming back up here. Hopefully we'll have Big Sur and we're all fixed on this device here. And then we're done with the erase. We'll click on done here, and that should be an empty system drive. But again, remember, be very careful, because if you look over here, they look very close to being the same. So when you click on it, make sure it says Macintosh hard drive, not Macintosh hard drive -data. And notice how it says encrypted. So only delete Macintosh hard drive. That's just the macOS that we're deleting on the drive. That's it. So we'll go over here, we'll move this out of the way, and we're going to reboot now back into macOS recovery on this device here. So give me a second, we'll be right back. Okay, we're back in recovery. This is almost finished here. We'll click cancel on that. So let's go back into that disk utility here and see if we can unlock that drive. Notice how we did not get a prompt to unlock recovery like we did when we previously rebooted there and we had the Macintosh hard drive there. So we should be able to just mount the drive now to be able to recover the data. Let's click continue. We'll wait for disk utility to load, and then we will click view, show all devices. We can see the container there. We also see the empty Macintosh hard drive, but we also see, look at this, we've got a Macintosh hard drive there, but it's unmounted and it still shows as encrypted. Now what we'll want to do is we'll want to try to click mount, and hopefully this password will work now. Give it a second. Now it says enter in the password. We'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. Give it a second here. And look at that. Our data is back. Now, the drive is now mounted, and we can see it's again 100% full. We can now do two things here. We are in recovery, so we could clear the data here and then reinstall Big Sur to the Macintosh hard drive. Now that we did that, now we should be able to boot back and mount it on the drive. So again, we could just go into terminal and clear up the space like we talked about before. But now that we can unlock the drive properly now, we can do target disk mode to any Mac now. And here we are on macOS Big Sur. We're all fixed, unencrypted device. So now let's do that. So let's reboot to target disk mode, and we'll show you how it will now mount on the Big Sur device. You can clear out the space, and then you can reinstall macOS Big Sur on the Macintosh hard drive, or now that you can copy your data over and reinstall. You decide on what you want to do, right? So we'll try that. We'll actually just copy the data over from target disk mode, or we'll clear up the space here. So we'll click on target disk mode, we'll restart, and we're going to connect us back to our Big Sur machine, and we should be able to unlock. And if you're still with me after this long video, you are a trooper. And hopefully this helps you get your data back, because I know what a huge pain this will be. And the problem is, until Apple releases a fix, there's going to be more and more people having to find this video. Now we're in target disk mode, and let's plug into our MacBook Pro Big Sur device here. Okay, we're connected with target disk mode for our Mac that was encrypted, and we erased the Macintosh hard drive only. Now we're being asked to unlock Macintosh hard drive data, so we can either clear space off or back up, put the files to an external hard drive, and then reinstall and erase the drive. So we'll enter in the password 1, 2, 3, 4 and enter. Give it a second here. And there it is. Macintosh hard drive data loaded on a macOS Big Sur that was encrypted before. We erased the Macintosh hard drive from recovery in disk utility, and now we can access if you don't have a Mojave system. Here's our user folder. We're going to users, we'll go into test, and this is where we can go into our desktop, and we can either back up, clear space, do whatever you want. We're set. Okay, this final way is for if you have an encrypted T2 Mac that you can't get access to a Mojave or a High Sierra device for target disk mode. And that might be a situation that you're in. So if you can't do that, you really only have one other option. If you want to be able to fix your device with target disk mode in Big Sur or Catalina. So this is a Big Sur device. I've got that encrypted Mac plugged in via target disk mode, and it's prompting for the password. Again, it's not going to accept it. We'll see that again. Type in the 1234, and it's going to shake us off. And what we're going to do is we're going to erase the system volume. See, there it goes again. We're going to hit cancel on this. We're going to open up disk utilities here, and we're going to take a look at the drive, and we're going to erase Macintosh hard drive where the system is located here. And you can see it. And if you don't see this, click view, show all devices. We're going to, this is where your data is stored, and you can see it's encrypted and we cannot unlock the device. If I click mount, it's going to ask us for the password again, and it's not going to accept it because it's 100% full and it's not going to accept that password. So we'll click that again just to show you that that's not going to work in Big Sur and Catalina. This would work in Mojave as we just showed earlier. So we're going to click cancel. We're going to click on Macintosh hard drive and we're going to erase that. We're not going to erase the volume group because we need this data here. We're going to click cancel on that again. We need this Macintosh hard drive data. That's where all of our data is. And you can see it's mounted now when I click cancel. So we can wait for that to mount. If it doesn't mount, that's fine. Now all we need to do is click erase. Do not click this. We're only erasing Macintosh hard drive. And if you want to see what's in there, it's just the system. None of your files are in there. This is just your system, not your user folder with all your data on it. That's stored in Macintosh hard drive data. So we're going to click erase, and it's going to erase this, and now we're going to be able to mount that drive, copy our data off to this Big Sur or Catalina device, and then you can reinstall macOS if you want to. We're going to try another trick though. And what I mean by that is we're going to actually clear enough space now that we can access our hard drive. We're going to let the Mac reboot and see if we can actually let it recreate the volume group and let it finish the upgrade Big Sur so we don't have to go through that whole clean and erase process. So now the system drive is erased. So if we click on it, it's 100% erased with 12 gigabytes free space. If we go in there, there's nothing in here. And now we can click on Macintosh hard drive and click on mount, and we'll be able to type in our password and get it to mount to access our data now. Look at that. Beautiful. Look at this. There's all your data. And there's our desktop. So now, here's again what we're going to do here. We're going to attempt to clear up some of these files. And here's all these folders with Big Sur installers and all kinds of stuff that I use to test and fill up the drive. So that's the plan. We're going to basically, because remember, the update partition is still there for the upgrade for macOS Big Sur to finish. So if we reboot the system, it's going to attempt to update this Macintosh hard drive again to Big Sur, but it's going to fail again because hard drive data is full. So let's clear out some space here, and we can see the space here. We'll click on Macintosh hard drive data, and we'll show how much we got free. So we freed up 12.5 gigabytes. Well, we need a lot more. We need 35. So let's delete this macOS Big Sur installer. Let's go to another folder. Let's delete this one, and we'll delete one more. Each one is 13 gigabytes in size. We'll delete this one too, and that should give us enough space. Right click on the trash, empty the trash, and that should give us enough free space to be able to finish the upgrade. Now we've got 44 gigs, plenty of space for this update to finish. So I've got a screen recording here to record what's going to happen here. We're ready to restart. We can highlight these drives, right click on eject the target disk mode, and then I'm going to connect the device here over the screen share, and we're going to watch this thing go here. So I just rebooted the encrypted Mac that we just removed the system volume. And then we cleared up enough space on Macintosh hard drive so the upgrade that's still staged, the Big Sur upgrade, can finish properly. We're going to type in our password here and hit enter. And now we're reinstalling or upgrading that empty Macintosh hard drive system volume. It's installing macOS Big Sur on that volume now. It also recreated the volume group, and hopefully when this is all done, we'll be at the login window. We'll be able to log in, we'll delete the other volume, and we'll be good to go, and we'll be right back as soon as that finishes. Okay, we're back up. And we're asked to log in, and now we have the accessibility screen. We'll click not now, and we'll disable ask Siri, and we should be at the desktop here next. And there we are, we're on the desktop. So let's take a look and see what's going on here. Our files are back. We've got all our files in the desktop. We got our files in this folder, and we've got some TCC prompts. So we definitely got all our files. But notice how Macintosh hard drive data is up here. So let's open up disk utility here and see what's going on. And we'll click show all devices. And there we go. So we've got our main Macintosh hard drive and we've got our layout. So let's compare that to what a layout should look like on a normal device. So we'll open up the host device that I'm on and we're going to compare them. See, so if we make sure to show all devices, and as you can see, it's fairly close. We've got our disk 1 container, we've got our Macintosh hard drive, and then we've got our booted snapshot that Big Sur uses now, and we've got our Macintosh hard drive data. But now look at this. We've got our Macintosh hard drive data and our Macintosh hard drive data. So we've got a duplicate Macintosh hard drive data. So when we click on this here, we can take a look at what's inside. So now what we have to do is we have to fix the layout. As you can see, we've got an extra Macintosh hard drive. If we click on this, it's going to show as empty. I'll click over here, move this out of the way so you can see that. As you can see right here, it shows that there's only 81 kilobytes on this volume, this Macintosh hard drive. So what it did is it created another volume set, but we have to rename this. So again, all we're doing is matching what we see here on this working laptop that didn't have this problem. So all we're going to do, we want to lay out with Macintosh hard drive with a snapshot inside, and then the Macintosh hard drive data where your data is stored. So we're going to go over here and we're going to remove this volume. So let me get this out of the way, and then we're going to show you what it'll look like. So to remove a volume, all we need to do is click on this minus button here, and it says, do you want to delete the volume Macintosh hard drive? Deleting Macintosh HD will erase all the data. There isn't any data on there. We're going to click delete. We'll give it a second here. Unmounting, you saw it disappear, and done. So now what we need to do is we need to rename the volume. So let's open up disk utility again. And as you can see, we're very close now. All we need to do is rename this Macintosh hard drive data to Macintosh hard drive. So watch this. You click on there one time, and if you don't see this on the desktop, you can go up to here to the Finder options here and click on Preferences and make sure this is selected here, hard disks, and then you'll be able to see the Macintosh hard drive here. So it does not look like it'll let us, because if we right click on it, it should say rename, but it looks like it's blanked out. So what we need to do now is we need to do it this way. So we'll click on here one time, give it a second, and then we'll clear out the hard drive data here like this and hit delete, and we should be renamed properly. Look at that. Now the final thing is to rename Macintosh hard drive data back to data. So we'll right click on here and we will click rename, and we will delete the last data part right here, delete, and click anywhere else, and we're done. We've got a Big Sur system back up and running with all of our files on our desktop. Now, let's make sure everything's running properly, but let's take a look at our other disk utility here to make sure our layout is proper and it matches perfectly. This is exactly what a proper layout with macOS Big Sur booting to a sealed snapshot looks like. So now let's reboot this machine to make sure everything's okay. Go to Apple and restart. Great. As you can see, the drive is still encrypted with our original account with test. We'll type in 1234 and we'll enter, and then it should boot right up back into the operating system, and your macOS Big Sur system has been rescued, restored, and reinstalled, and all your data remains. Remember, what we just did here was for an encrypted device with target disk mode where you do not have access to a Mojave or High Sierra device. This is if you only have like a friend who has Catalina or macOS Big Sur, and most likely the best way to do is have a macOS Big Sur because it understands the snapshot here. So there we go. We're back in. We can see everything's mounted properly. All of our files are on the desktop here, and we are looking really good. That's it. Everything's here. All of our files are here. All those files that we deleted here are gone, but the ones that we left in here are still here, and that's it. That's for pairing a encrypted device that you do not have access to a High Sierra or Mojave device. I know this is really confusing, all these different steps, and I tried to do the best that I could to talk about all the different steps and the scenarios that you might be in. If you have any questions over one of the parts in the video that you were confused about, let me know in the comments. I'll give you a hand. I'll be here and I'll answer those questions to the best of my ability. I want you to be able to recover from this, and I want you to be able to get your data back. So let me know if you have any questions or comments. Put them in the comment section, and I'll answer and I'll help you out to the best of my ability. That's it, guys. I hope that you got your data back here. And I know this is a long video, and I know it was very complicated. There were so many different weird scenarios and got-yous with this whole problem. And again, it was all because the installer didn't check for free space. What a situation, huh? Even if you didn't have your Mac and you watched this, maybe you learned something today. And if you did and you got your data saved, give this video a thumbs up. So hopefully it'll get into the algorithm and it'll help someone else when they search for this video. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, click on that subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter for the latest information. You can follow my article for the latest updates too. And if you're already a subscriber, you know I appreciate you being here, and we'll catch you in the next one. Talk to you soon.